Hello and welcome back to Friday Minis. Now, today let's talk about audio. In particular, one way in which we can visualize audio that actually gives us a lot of information. You would probably have seen this representation, a wave representation of audio. Now, this is great because this tells us basically, what the air is doing over time and what kind of sounds it can produce as a result. This actually is just sort of the simplest, most straightforward way of seeing audio. While it is great and it is useful for a lot of situations, you may find that in certain cases, you want a better breakdown of what is actually happening. This is where the Spectrograph view comes in. You can see this in Audacity, a free open source audio editing program. Instead of seeing a wave, you see this very interesting graph. Now, it may be a bit overwhelming because there actually is a lot happening in this graph, but let's break it down and let's try and better understand it. Now, a normal graph like a wave is a two-dimensional graph. Essentially, your horizontal axis is time and your vertical axis refers to the displacement of air over time. Your spectrograph, however, is actually three-dimensional. Of course, we only have two dimensions on the screen, which is why, we need an additional axis, and that is the intensity. Here's how you read the graph. Your horizontal axis is time, just like in your waveform. However, your vertical axis is actually frequencies. That's right, the lower sounds, the bass is all at the bottom, the higher sounds, the treble, the whistles are all at the top. To read a spectrograph, you need to look at a tiny snippet of time. Essentially, the intensities of color, throughout that particular moment in time, tells you the intensities of the various frequencies at that time. So yeah, essentially this graph is telling you how loud each frequency is over time. And that is essentially 3 axes worth of information, which is why it's presented in this manner. So that's great, we know how to use this particular tool, but what is it for? How can it actually help us? Instead of telling, I'm going to just show. I'm going to compare the same note being played on a synthesized piano versus that of a guitar. Now, because these two instruments are going to be playing the same note, that is middle A or 440 Hz, they are going to sound like they're at the same pitch, right? They're going to sound the same in that sense. However, the nature of it is different. A piano sounds like a piano, a guitar sounds like a string, right? So in fact, just listen to the two sounds and you'll be able to tell the difference. So hopefully you can tell the subtle differences between the two. Let's now put both of these sounds into Audacity, look at their spectrograms, and we'll see. Essentially, both of these instruments produce the same fundamental frequency, 440 Hz. However, their harmonics, the other tones that are happening at the same time, are different. This essentially creates a different sound, a different timbre, to use the correct term. It is these harmonics that actually allow us to identify the different instruments, even though they are playing what is technically the same note. A spectrogram allows us to very easily see these differences. Of course, that is nice in a novel sense, but what is the practical use? One application I found very useful recently is to actually remove noise. I'm going to show you 2 examples, the first of which was when we are recording the podcast. So listen to this short snippet of audio and I'm sure you can spot that high-pitched noise that comes from the road. Take a listen.
Okay, so that ended better than it than I expected.
I hope that didn't hurt your ears too much, but I'm sure you heard that sort of squeaky kind of sound. It's probably the sound of brakes, but it's really undesirable in our audio. If we switch into our spectrogram view, you will see this very, very clearly on the screen. This line right here refers to that sound. This allows us to, at one glance, know the frequency of that sound and to be able to get rid of it using what is known as a notch filter. A notch filter essentially works like this. At a particular frequency, we want to reduce the volume. Since we've isolated this sound, we can use a notch filter to get rid of it. After running the operation, you can see the spectrogram has cleaned right up. And if we play back that same snippet of audio, you realize that that sound is basically gone.
Okay, so that ended better than it than I expected.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of the spectrogram view. Now, we can also do this for more complex noise. For our next example, this is a recording I was doing right here on my table, It might be because of electrical interference, it might be because of wind. I got this really weird noise in my recording. Have a listen. Essentially can be answered by a textbook or by a web page. In a spectrograph view, this one is a bit more complex because it is actually a combination of thousands. In fact, these lines are 1000, 2000, 3000 and so on. What this means is I can actually run the notch filter multiple times to get rid of each one of these lines. Now, this one is a little bit more challenging because the 1000 Hz one in particular cuts right through my voice. If I were to use too big of a notch, I end up removing frequencies that are legitimate, are actual frequencies that I want to keep. Which is why when I tried to remove noise from the lower bands, what I did was I tried to keep the notch as narrow as possible. While it still impacts my voice, it does so minimally. There you have it, that is the spectrogram view in Audacity. Of course, this is not just an Audacity feature, you will find this in basically any audio editing suite. If you need it, use it. Now that you're able to read it, you'll find it as a very interesting and useful tool that can be used in many situations. That's all there is for this episode of Friday Minis. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, you're watching 0612 TV with NERDfirst.net. Thank you very much for watching. If you like my work and are feeling generous, you can shoot me a one-time donation on PayPal or sign up for a recurring one on Patreon. Of course, you can simply like, comment and subscribe. You know the deal. For more videos, links to my channel and a related playlist are on screen. Thank you for your support.